How's it going, YouTube? Coaching today with another video, and today, guys, what to bring to you is a complete guide to Dragon Link. And today, I'm joined by Trishula. Introduce yourself and just kind of talk about what you do and where you've been.
Yo, what's up, guys? Mike Thomas, aka the Young Trishula here, and I'm here with my boy GGYGO to just talk about dragons. Some of you guys used to know me as the permanent resident Dragon Link bozo on Twitch. Unfortunately, I've had to branch out and play other decks, but we still rocking out with the Dragon Link. And yeah.
You definitely are a very mettled player. You have a lot of tops. Let's talk about those for a second.
Yeah, so in the past year we've done quite well with the Dragon Link deck, getting top 4 in the Remote Duel Invitational with it. So Dragon Link's bringing home a prize card for me, which love those babies. Also getting me a handful of other tops in other Remote Duel events, and in the one of the LCSs, we kind of pioneered the Dragon Link strategy about a year ago when it was in its infancy, using the Viline Cube strategy and whatnot. I was one of the only people playing it, and it did quite well for me at the time. Like, nobody had really seen the deck before; they didn't know what to do against it, and it's really powerful. I don't know what to say. Back then, you used to just lock them out of everything.
Yeah, having those baby dragons, and then we got Chaos Face, and of course that was insane. So the deck itself definitely has a lot of power until you see a Protoss on the board, and then it's a little scoop phase, you know.
little scoop phase, yeah. Now, not quite so good. Now we're the ones getting locked out, unfortunately.
Yeah, so maybe we'll see a resurgence very soon as well. But I did want to talk about Dragon because I do think that is a very big dark horse. Again, when you aren't playing against Sword Soul, or if you're going first against them, they don't have like the Protoss. You do have a really good way to play. Another really big thing too is that there are ways to counter it, and we'll talk about those later on in the video. But just to kind of get into things, if you haven't already seen Trishula, definitely go ahead and follow him on Twitch. Go to his YouTube, subscribe. He's also a coach on Metafy like myself. So if you do need help, especially if you are looking down the lines of things like Dragon, feel free to hit up Mike, and definitely feel free to get that session going.
Yeah. And just a quick note, I believe there is a pretty decent discount for people that are subscribed to me on Twitch. So if you do subscribe to me on Twitch, you can get a nice discount on those coaching sessions. On those coaching sessions. On those coaching sessions.
Absolutely. We can hop right on into our first thing. And so I actually have a couple questions for you about the deck, since you have pioneered certain things on the deck and new ideas. We've seen a couple cards kind of come in and drop out of this deck over time. And one card that I see happen a lot is Brotar. Brotar is definitely a card here that I see going in and out. Why do you think that is?
So Brotar's really interesting. For one key reason is that its effect that allows you to summon itself out when a card is destroyed. So in metas where there's a lot of destruction, Brotar can be really good because it's not dead in your hand, and it's kind of competing for the same slot as the Dragon Maid package in the Dragon Link deck. And for those that are familiar, Dragon Link typically plays 1 to 2 copies of Chamber Dragon Maid, which, when it's summoned, allows you to add a Dragon Maid spell or trap to your hand. So originally, you used to add the spell in order to summon it back and get into a Link 2. Now we have better ways to do that, so we instead add Tidying, which is Disruption, which can also bring back the chambermaid from the graveyard. So if you really need to, it can actually function as the spell as you used to use it. So that is a lot of really good utility for the deck. So it's really hard to give that up. And usually Brotar just gets cut in favor of the Dragon Maids because it doesn't do anything on summon. It's kind of dead in your hand. But there's still a place for it if you're really afraid of your opponent popping your normal summon. So it's potentially good right now. Like, I've had a few lists that I've played where I've put Brotar back in just to compete with Destroy Phoenix Enforcer. So Brotar's interesting.
I think that's a good point. I also really like the Chamberlain Dragon Maid just because if you have things like Ravine, you can pitch the Tiding and send the Chamber, and then you get a free monster there as well, which is a really cool line of play with that. Especially because Dragon's more fishable now versus like having dead set combos with things like LP. So those types of interactions are really important.
Yeah, yeah, and Brotar really benefited a lot more when we were playing the World Legacy Guard Dragon in the deck too, because now we don't really have a good way to revive the Brotar. We're not going to waste our Pisty Reborn on it, because before you could just summon it off of LP, but now you only have one real way to access your Brotar, which is just to summon it off of Pisty, and or summon it off of the Seals. And because you're not, most of the time Seals is summoning the Chamber if you didn't already get to it, and you don't have LP to summon it out from the deck, it's most of the time just not worth it.
So I do want to make a quick note here too for everyone that's watching the video. We're 184 subs away from the new Striker Core package being sent out to one of the viewers. So once we hit 8K, definitely feel free to go ahead and leave the sub so we can give away this nice package. And then at 10K, we'll be giving away another either deck core or maybe like a higher tier giveaway on like a card or two. So definitely keep your eye out for that. To kind of slide off of Brotar and talk about the other card you just mentioned, being World Legacy Guard Dragon, why do you think this card got cut, and do you think that it could come back?
So this card got cut for kind of the same reason I was talking about with LP. Not having LP anymore kind of limits what you can do with Dragon Link. Before, with World Legacy Guard Dragon, that card was a mandatory 3 of. Like, you could not play the deck without that card at 3, and if you did, you were just messing up. Because if you open World Legacy Guard Dragon plus any 1-card starter in the Dragon Link deck before when you had LP, you could play through Nibiru plus another hand trap 100% guaranteed. Like, you could still full combo through Nibiru and a hand trap, like, as long as you had the World Legacy Guard Dragon. Because you could just move the LP, and you significantly reduced the ceiling, or, like, the minimum floor of the deck. Like, because you were able to just move the LP, you could get straight into Pisty right away. You didn't have to go through the effort of setting up, LP pointing to something. So it did a lot for you, and it got another card out of your deck, and that card would get you a resource, and then Pisty gets something back that you've already used. So you could do a lot of juggling. And now it's just not nearly as good. Really, all it's doing is just bringing out a monster. The Pisty is usually not getting you anywhere. Like, just summoning back Pisty on your own doesn't really do too much for you. Sometimes you can get an extra negate out of it. But really, one of the biggest reasons to cut it now is just because it's not as crazy as it used to be. There's just better cards you can play. Like, I'd rather play 3 more hand traps than I would just an extender at this point.
Yeah, and I feel like a lot of this card's legitimacy came when, even if we had Pisty to be able to summon and bring back a monster, Red MD also just can't keep summoning like it used to because of the errata. So that's a really big thing where Pisty even is not like that great anymore.
Yeah, when Red MD used to not be a once per turn with this deck was ridiculous. This deck could just do whatever he wanted it to do. I was summoning VFD in this deck on top of the full board that like this deck used to make. So like
just because.
Was just yeah, just because it was funny. It was funny.
If you can do it, you can do it, man. Like, why not?
Yeah, I mean, I may as well.
So that's why I really like this card a lot, but I know that it's not the best anymore. I did want to bring up both of these cards, though, because they have been a big topic of discussion in the deck as to why we do or do not play them, because they have been such big staples, but sometimes your staples in a deck do get moved around based on how the deck gets hit and how it evolves. So I wanted to just kind of quickly mention these two, but thanks for your insight on those.
Yeah.
The next thing I want to bring out, too, is the fact that doing guides of decks, we typically want to break it down to really simple levels to people who may not understand what the deck does, what it is, or what the power cards are. So the biggest power card that we have here is going to be that Chaotic Ruler. And this is going to be the biggest Ash target in the deck. It's also the card that you just want to turbo out. It's what makes even Gamma that much better, is because if you Gamma, you can go straight into your Chaotic Ruler. And then you can also use this to play around with your hand traps. If you're playing like Meister or Valor, you can get into additional interruption if you need it. Or if you need the extender, you can also mill into that. So this kind of plays a very big part in the deck. How do you think this card really did evolve Dragon?
I mean, this card is the deck, like, to be perfectly honest. So you kind of mentioned a few points that, kind of also build on why we're not playing stuff like Brotar and World Legacy Guard Dragon anymore. And that's kind of addressing a common misconception with Dragon is that it is not a combo deck. Dragon is not a combo deck. It is very much a mid-range control strategy where the idea is that you want to burn hand traps. So really all of the Dragon Link deck does is it just puts a lot of really powerful cards into play and forces you to answer them with hand traps. And then, you're going to be sitting with just a few cards left, and our goal is to use something like just a seals just to end your turn. Just bounce your normal summon, the game's over. And because our end board isn't all that strong, a card like Chaotic Magical is so powerful because you get to mill stuff like hand traps, like you're mentioning with Valor, Meister, Crow, whatever it is. So this card, most of the time, if this card isn't finding you like an absolute blowout card like Legionnaire, it's finding you a hand trap. So this card is effectively still a negate. Like, it's effectively the same as Borreload Savage Dragon because it's still getting you a negate, and it gives you recursion, so it allows you to summon again on your next turn, lets you extend, lets you do whatever you need it to do. So it really just helps you get resources and get what you need in order to control the game, and also force your opponent to use hand traps on it like Ash Blossom, so that they're losing cards while you're still putting them into play and building towards your end goal.
Yeah, I really do like this card. It does really synergize with the Chaos Space and the Grave as well. If you don't already have like your Striker Dragon banished and you need it again, then you can always go ahead and banish it with the Papega Ruler, then use your Chaos Space, add it back, and then you have those extra cards in play, and just a really good way to recycle your resources as well.
Yeah, that's a really good point too. Is that with the only one Striker Dragon now, that really crippled the deck. That was something I was talking about a lot before the ban list. Is that hitting Striker Dragon to 1 would really cripple the deck, and it did. So having the way to get it into the banish zone consistently, so you can put it back with your Chaos Space, is really important. And it's just a great upside that Papega has in helping you recycle your cards and just continue your engine like that.
Yeah, I remember just seeing this card when it was printed, and I was like, well, this is a card. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Like, mill 5? That sounds crazy.
Add a light or a dark. I wonder what deck this fits into. Like,
it's not like all the best monsters in Yu-Gi-Oh! Are light and dark.
right. So we're going to move into something a little interesting here, because we've been seeing a lot of lists either play with or without the DP package, and the fact that the package still does work in the deck, whether it be more consistent or less consistent, there are still people that are indulging themselves in playing the DP package. And reason being is the same thing we just mentioned with things like DPE and Chaotic Ruler, that if you have like a plasma that you mill off of your Chaotic Ruler in your graveyard, you can send your Chaotic Ruler to the grave, reborn it by banishing your plasma, and then with your Chaos Space you can recycle your plasma, so you still have a way to get into your DPE. If you mill the Celestial, you can always add that instead, and then go into your Anaconda and summon your DPE. So if there is a will, there's a way in the Yu-Gi-Oh community. I feel like a lot of people are still looking for ways to keep innovating and evolving their list. And so this is something that we've been seeing a lot. How do you feel about the DPE package being in Dragon?
So personally, I'm not too big of a fan of the package. I kind of look at it like I looked at Dragoon in the deck, where I think Dragon has a really tight extra deck most of the time, and a lot of the time I don't want to give up space in that extra deck or in that main deck to play cards that just aren't, solely focused on the Dragon Link strategy. I think the DPE version is powerful though, because when it goes off, it adds a whole nother layer to the deck of just recursion. Like, normally you just have the seal bounce and summon, so that floats and gets you more resources, but this is effectively just another copy of seals. And if anybody remembers the Hakuna Matata spreadsheet, seals tidying is 100% FTK, so double seals tidying is like 200% FTK. Like, that's like it's really powerful. Personally, I don't think it synergizes that well with the deck, but when it goes off, like, it's actually crazy. Like, there's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah, today for again just educational purposes, I'm going to be showing you Trishula's list without the DP list, without the DP in it, and then my own list with DP in it, just to kind of show you an option if you do want to play it or if you don't want to play it, just so you kind of have a basis to start off of and your own ways to test. Because I always say that you shouldn't go off of other people's opinions on if something is good or not. You should test it yourself and really make your own assumptions, because it might work out better for you, or you could pioneer something new rather than just listening to what other people have to say about it.
Yeah, 100%.
And the next thing I want to talk about is how to play around Nibiru. This is pretty common in the deck to do. This is just really nice, and it's a really good line of play. If you are ever thinking that your opponent does have Nibiru, you can go into a Heretic Seal very early. And what's really cool about this is if at any point they hit you with Nibiru, you can use the Heretic Seals effect in the graveyard to then summon your Red MD, and you can summon back like a Tracer. And you still have ways to keep going through Nibiru. So there's some people that go like the ROM, but if your opponent is main decking things like the Nibiru, which really isn't unheard of nowadays, just know that sometimes it is a little cleaner just going to the Heretic Seal to make sure that you still have a way to play. How often would you say you
Yeah.
probably do that?
Like 100% of the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, all the time. Like I'm never playing my hand out unless I have a seal on the field. Like I'm just not gonna do it.
Yeah.
Because I would rather just end on Seal's Pass than to just get my whole board wiped with a Nibiru and just be like, oh shit, now I don't do anything.
Yeah.
Also, like it's kind of you kind of naturally end up in that position too, because of Tracer's effect locking you into darks. You kind of have to go for seal early. Like you can't really like if your dragon opponent never has a seal on their field before they're using Tracer effect, they're doing something wrong. Like something is just wrong.
Yeah.
So I think one of the cool ways to play around Nibiru though, like when you're playing this deck and you have like a really gas hand, like you have a really good hand, is you can actually go into Borreload's Savage Dragon early. You lose out a little bit of early gas because you're not getting your
Pepe
chaotic
earlier.
magical effect. Yeah,
Yeah.
Pepega's. I was trying to think of what its real name was. Yeah, you're not resolving your Pepega early. So you do miss out on like the free extra body and you missed out on an extra card. But if your hand's just that gas, like you can just ignore that, go for the Savage Dragon, and you don't know how many times I've gone for Savage Dragon way earlier than you're supposed to. And that forces out Nibiru there. And it's like, oh, okay, cool. So, they're going to Nibiru me, that's fine. I'm going to trigger my seal, summon Red MD, get back that Tracer, and then go into something like a Quadborrel, use Quadborrel to get back the Tracer and a Recharger, and then go into like a Pepega, and then, like have a Rocket Synchron. Or like if I have a normal summon, for example, I could just go normal summon Rocket Synchron afterwards and just be like, I'm like, oh, you put my Savage in the graveyard, okay, I'm going to make Hot Red.
Yeah. It's a really solid line of play, and there's always ways to play around the Rocket, especially with Dragon. I've seen less and less people put it in against the Dragon deck too, just because of that reason alone, that you can still extend past it, and it's kind of like mediocre at that point. I'd be more concerned about the Veilers and the Imperms on my Pepega ruler than anything, but this is just a nice way to play around it, just for those of you who have not really touched the deck so far.
Yeah.
The next thing that we're going to go into is actually going to be talking about that Quadborrel play and how important Quadborrel actually has been for the deck. That card's insanity. I've seen many different cool plays with it. Being able to just look at your opponent's board, and if they have like a unicorn or like a big link monster on it too, and being able to pop their monster. There's a lot of very cool things, but mostly it's you're going hot red first, and then you're going to be going into your Quadborrel play where you're going to be popping itself, swimming back your 2, and then going into your Savage. Typically, we see this as a line of play. Do you think that holds true most of the time, just going your hot red, then your quad?
So I would actually never summon Quadborrel unless I've been Nibiru'd, to be perfectly honest. So that's actually why I keep Quadborrel in my deck, is a lot of the time, even if I can make that Savage Dragon, like, even if I have the opportunity to make Savage Dragon, a lot of the time I will just not, and I will just let my, like, I'll attempt to end my turn, because then if my opponent has Nibiru, they're gonna Nibiru me. And it's like, okay, now cool, I can summon Red MD, I can get back my Hot Red, and then I can make the Savage anyway by making Quadborrel. Like, making Quadborrel with the rockets that we're going to use to make the Savage anyway. So, you can still end on Hot Red Savage Dragon through a Nibiru if you're just, if you're just patient, you just say like, okay, well, I don't need the Savage. One of the biggest misplays I see people make with this deck all the time is they use Quadborrel before a Nibiru has been activated, and it's like it because what happens is if you reveal Nibiru after they have used their Quadborrel, you're going to wipe their whole field. They're locked out of Link 2, so they can't make an IP Mastering or anything to back up their Hot Red. And you've gone super neg. Like you've discarded a card and you have reborns. You're out of recovery. This is your only recovery card. So the best you can do if you use this Quadborrel, if you haven't used your Red MD already, is Red MD reborn your Hot Red and pray. But at that point they already have a monster that can almost contest your Hot Red. So if they deal with your Hot Red, you're kind of in a bad spot, I would say.
Yeah, for sure. There's definitely interesting scenarios with that. I've always preached on my channel too that if you have a interruption and a negate, a lot of times it's just enough to really be able to live that turn and be able to come back on the next one. There are a couple decks that I feel like can blow past that. A lot of the times, being Sword Soul Tenny, that deck has a lot of aggression. It can usually pop through it, but like on your typical board, I say like a negation interruption is usually fine.
Yeah, yeah. Sword Soul Tenyi is one of those decks that unfortunately Dragon has a really bad matchup into right now. But Dragon, it's interesting though because against the pure Sword Soul deck, so the Sword Soul deck playing like destroy Phoenix Enforcer rather than the Tenyi cards, Dragon actually has a really good matchup versus that version of the deck. Because they can't really deal with just the seal bounce, like just getting rid of their token. Sometimes it's just good enough to end the game.
Yeah, that's always really strong too. I love Seals as a card. Just super good. Not only does it like get the bounce, but also just like the summon, especially if you're summoning out like the chamber and then you're getting the tiding for free. Like it's just very good to see here.
Yeah.
I feel like that also synergizes pretty well with Quadborrel being able to discard the tiding.
Yeah, it does. That's actually how a lot of the OTKs go in this deck. Is what you'll do is you'll summon Chamber and you'll add the tidying to your hand. And on your next turn, say you have like Rocket Synchron, for example, you might normal summon your Rocket Synchron. Say you've already used both your synchros, you don't need a synchro with it. You can just go straight into Quadborrel, and if they have any Link 2 or higher monster on the field, you have game. And all you have to do is just summon the Quadborrel, pitch the tidying out of your hand, pop their Link 2 or higher, and then you summon back as many rockets as you can, and then you have access into access code, Unicorn access code, and then you have the chamber to summon back. So maybe maybe you didn't use Savage Dragon, for example. You can then synchro off into like Savage, and then you have access code plus a 3K body, and you're already there.
Yeah, not to mention having that field spell initially and just being able to open up your turn with that too.
Yeah, yeah. Keeping Dragon Ravine or keeping Boot Sector is really strong.
Yeah, the longer you can keep Boot Sector, the more pressure you have on your opponent. That card's insane. It's so scary.
One of the best cards in the deck.
Um,
100% one of the best ones.
yeah, I just remember like having a big board, and I was like, "Oh yeah, I'm good." And then my dragon opponent being like, "Yeah, summon 3," and I was like, "Oof."
Yeah. We soul charge every turn.
Yeah,
Good luck.
super fun, especially with cards like Quadborrel hanging around.
Yeah, yeah. Just I can soul charge twice. It's good fun. It's good.
The next thing I want to talk about too is being able to counter things like Dark Ruler and Droplet. I know that we're going to be talking about our sideboards coming up soon as well, and how yours doesn't reflect this, mine does, I believe, and that's being the ability to have things like Gozen and a Rivalry in your sideboard to be able to counter if you do get hit with a Dark Ruler. Cards like Gozen against like the Sword Soul deck alone is just a really good side in, because even if they do have Protos, the rest of the deck can't really grind with you, because being able to summon anything else, everything's different attributes. So it just becomes really, really hard. The only thing they can do there is going like Mo Yi, summon Water Token, go into like Drag It. So it does get kind of hard, but I do really like these in the side because it does counter the big board breakers if you're worried about those.
Yeah, no, I think Rivalry and Gozen are some really strong cards that you can play in the Dragon Link deck. Rivalry used to be when Tri Brigade was one of the best decks. Rivalry was probably the best card in the Dragon Link deck, simply just because nothing in that format could beat it. And what's really cool about the Dragon deck is most of the dragons are dark, and they're all dragons. Like your entire extra deck is dragons. So you can more or less build whatever board you want, and even if they dark ruler you, even if they droplet you, it's like, all right, well, I'm gonna flip a floodgate too, like, so good luck. Another interesting thing that you can do to play around dark ruler and droplet, if you have more of like a combo in board, is you can actually end with hot red on your field, and you can put your tidying in the graveyard. So say you have like both copies of tidying, like say you just draw both, you could pitch that that one copy of tidying into the graveyard with say like Dragon Ravine, for example, and you could use it in response to say a dark ruler. So say your opponent dark rulers your board, you can chain tidying and then chain hot red to negate the dark ruler because you're no longer responding to dark ruler with a monster effect, you're responding to tidying. So that used to be like the traditional way to play around those cards, but I think it's really cool the innovation that we're seeing with just putting floodgates in the deck. It's like, you know what, why not? Let's just put trap cards in the deck. Like,
that kind of ties back to what you're saying though about it being more mid range than combo and being able to play things like floodgates.
yeah, 100%. I think this deck has seen a lot of development. Because like it used to be you didn't need to play floodgates or anything like that because you would just end on the Buster Whelp and your opponent couldn't summon anyway, so it didn't matter.
Yeah.
But now, like just to circle back to the point is that Dragon I think is always going to be able to play like any kind of strategy just because the quality of Dragon cards is so high.
Yeah, it's not like Plant or something, right? Like, there's actually just so many Dragon cards out there. Like, why do they print so many Dragon cards, you know? And then we're like, all right,
Cool.
they banned LP and they gave us Chaotic Ruler, and we're like, okay, I guess you want us to still play Dragons. Like, I don't get where you're going with this.
Exactly.
They're like, we're going to ban LP and the deck's going to be dead. And we're like, what's this? Like, hello? So,
Deck's not dead.
no, so...
Uh-oh.
We take those though. We take those.
Yeah.
I think that's hilarious actually, because like we see other decks where like, oh, it's gone forever, and then we see Dragon, and we're like, I guess it's not dead. Like we're good.
How many times was this deck hit on the ban list?
A lot.
They hit Union Carrier,
Wyvern,
Wyvern. I think they hit the Buster Whelp too, right?
Agarpain, LP.
LP. Yeah. This deck just keeps getting hit, and it doesn't care.
They're Red MD.
Like what's funny about this is I'm almost considering playing this deck for YCS Pasadena, and this is the deck that I played at YCS Pasadena before the pandemic. Like this is the same. I was still playing Dragons like 3 years ago.
Yeah, they hit the baby dragons down the one. Like they've done quite the many hits to dragon, and they just can't find the right hit because it's a fishbowl deck. Like there's more cards that we can just throw in to sub out and defrag dragon. Like there's so many different cards that are just like solid to play. So to me, I think that's really cool. So the next card that we have here being Noctovision, we just got it not too long ago, and this is another card that's actually just insane. And I want to talk about like the secret effect that it has for a second, just because this card is so nuts already, and like a lot of people don't know about this other effect. Talk about your interactions with it.
Yeah, so Noctovision's a really strong card, and most people know this card for like what it does on your turn, which is that if you summon a Dark Dragon, you can reveal it, and then you can special summon it, and when it gets linked off, you get to draw a card. And a lot of people just think that the card that's where the card ends, because that's already really good. Like, oh, I get a free extender that draws me a card that's broken. Like, sure, I'll take that.
Right.
But Noctovision actually has 3 effects, and nobody bothers to ever read the last effect, which is so strong. And that is if your opponent targets a set card in your spell and trap card zone, you can banish it from your graveyard to negate that effect. So this happens all the time, especially with tidying in the deck, is your opponent will know that they can't play through like Seal Tidying. Like this used to happen all the time against Prank Hit. Is that your opponent would see Seal Tidying, right? And they're like, all right, well, I can deal with Seal, but I can't deal with Tidying. So they would Cosmic Cyclone the set card. And you can just banish Nocto from the graveyard and be like, nah, negate. And I've had so many people be like, what are you doing? Banish your set card. I Cosmic'd it. I'm like, I'm going to negate that with Nocto. I was like, what do you mean you're negating that with Nocto? Like, you're using Savage? I'm like, no, I'm not using Savage.
I'm using Nocto.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And people pick it up and they're like, "What the hell? This thing has more words on it."
It's crazy what we have in this game that just allow us to have fun,
Yeah.
Cards like that though, the first time I read it was when I was trying to cosmic a back row, and I was like, "Whoa, that card's cool." But yeah, that's something that a lot of people they just don't know. So it's also a 7 too, which is pretty crazy because one rocket
Yeah.
synchron equals Papega Ruler. So it's pretty nice.
Yeah, and actually, so there's a lot of really cool things with it being a 7. Like you mentioned with Rocket Synchron, there's also another really cool play where you say the only card in your hand is Rocket Synchron.
Right.
So, like, say your opponent's field is Nightmare Unicorn and no other cards, like, just for the sake of simplicity. You're in, like, a grind game. You top deck Rocket Synchron. You're like, well, okay, I can make a Savage Dragon, I can poke over, I can pass to them. You actually have lethal in that position. You can normal summon Rocket Synchron, summon back Noctovision, link off into Quadborrel, draw a card to discard for your
Yeah.
Quadborrel, pitch it, pop that, summon back 3, and then just go into whatever. You can go into Papega, mill 5, go into Unicorn, go into Access Code, bring back your Papega, and that's game.
Yeah, it's
Um,
so good.
it's so good. And then there's actually one other thing that I want to mention with this card being a 7, and this is something that I see people misplay with it sometimes, but I think it's because people don't realize it's a misplay. Is that normal summon Seifert plus Absorator is the best 2-card combination in the entire deck. Most people think it's Chaos Space plus Absorator, but it's actually normal summon Seifert plus Absorator because you get the add of Noctovision, you get the search off of Absorator, you get the free body from Nocto, and you get a boot sector search, and you get a draw off Noctovision.
That's so good too.
So yeah, so it's like you've done your Absorator Chaos Space play, but you get all the exact same advantage. But the benefit of it is that you don't have to use your baby dragons. You don't have to use Chaos Space. So you can still you could draw into Chaos Space off your Noctovision, and now you're in the exact same spot, but you can then summon the baby dragons and keep going, and it's just so good. It's so strong, and then you're protecting your back row as well. You're filling your graveyard with darks for a potential Levianeer later. It's 100% the best play in the deck.
No, that sounds really cool. Yeah, I didn't even think about that one with Safer. That's actually really nice.
Yeah.
I mean, you've been playing the deck for long as I've been playing Striker, so
I actually I was counting my hours on Twitch to just see because I mostly stream Dragon Link. When I was playing DB Ladder last year, it was almost exclusively Dragon Link. I didn't really mess with other decks because Dragon Link was just it was
best
just so
deck.
good. Best deck. 4 more months of Dragon Link was just a meme on my channel because every time a new ban list came out, I was like, all right, 4 more months of Dragon Link, let's go.
Yeah.
And that happened 4 times. I was just like, I'm getting sick of this. I want to play something else.
Like,
So, I think I put close to 1,000 hours just playing just Dragon Link.
that's wild.
Last year, so it's crazy.
Well, I'm going to be talking about your list now, kind of dive into a couple things. If you want to talk about some of the ideology around this, I know I see the level 1 Red Eyes again. That's pretty not too usual. You're playing too safer. Let's talk about some of these card choices.
Yeah, so this is a very standard Dragon Link list that I've sent you. Kind of give people an idea of kind of what the baseline or the standard cookie cutter version of this deck is. And so I'll break it down kind of the way I think about it, and I'm going to start with 9 hand traps in this list, being Nibiru, 3 Ash, 3 Nibiru, 3 Ash, 3 Gamma. What these hand traps are change all the time. It's never consistent which 9 they're playing, but it's usually about 9 hand traps. This list, because it's playing Gamma, is playing 1 Driver just as a filler card. But why this is it's just for the math. This gives you a very high chance to open at least 1 hand trap and an okay chance to open 2. These are probably the best hand traps at dealing with what Dragon Link struggles with. You can also put DD Crow in this deck as well, because the biggest concern for Dragon Link in this format is Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer, because this deck kind of struggles if your normal summon gets stopped. And so, you have Ash to Ash the Fusion Destinies. You have Gamma, because Gamma is so good going second against Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer, because if they just Phoenix Enforcer your normal summon, they pop it, you're like, oh no, what am I going to do? They trigger their Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer in the graveyard. And then you can chain Gamma to them triggering Destroyer Phoenix in the graveyard, summon it, and go straight into Pega and continue playing. So that's why that's there. And then Nibiru, of course, to just try and, equalize game states against other combos. For the Rockets, we're playing 3 Tracer, 1 Recharger, 2 Synchron. This has been pretty standard as the lineup for quite a while. You can get away with playing 2 Tracer, but playing 3 is just, maximum consistency. The 2 Absol then to give you as high of a chance as possible to see the tracers. You have to max out on your rockets now because you don't have LP. So if you don't see it, used to be that if you didn't see a rocket, it wasn't the end of the world because you could just LP summon it out in the worst case scenario. But now you have to draw it, so you just want to see it. I've even played lists that play like 3 Absol because you just really have to see it.
Yeah, I definitely feel that too because like the tracer is really important. Back when we did have LP, I think it was funny that you mentioned that is because like your play was literally like, oh, I don't have tracer, I need to get tracer, LP time. Like,
yeah, just go to the LP. It's like no tracer. I guess I can give up my chambermaid. Oh well. Like,
yeah, you still had it.
Yeah, but now it's just like, all right, I have to draw it, otherwise I'm ending on seals and passing. And yeah, going to the black metals that you pointed out. So there's actually, so in Dragon Link, there's always 2 starters that you can pick from. It's always black metal or Seyfert. And which one that you play depends very heavily on how prevalent Droll and Lancia are in the meta. So if Lancia is more common, you play Seyfert. If Droll and Lockbird is more common, you play Black Metal Dragon. And the reason for that is that if your opponent has a Droll and Lockbird in your hand, and you have the choice between summoning Seyfert and summoning Black Metal, if you summon Seyfert and tribute off Seyfert, you still get your collapse, but then they Droll you. So, it's okay if you have Gamma in your hand, but if you don't have the Gamma, you now just have wasted your normal summon. You've DPE popped yourself, is all you've done. But if you have the black metal, you normal summon the black metal, go straight into your striker dragon. You add boot and you add red MD, so you add your follow up. So they can drop Droll on you there, but you already have access to seals, and if you have Rocket Tracer in your hand, you already have Seals Savage or Seals Pepega. Probably not going to go for Pepega since they Drolled you, but you still have Seals Savage. So it plays into Droll really nicely, and because just about everybody's siding Droll right now, I prefer to play Black Metal as my main starter over Seyfert, but you still have to play Seyfert just because it's a light and it lets you get back to your Legionnaire.
Yeah, the Safer is definitely one of the most goated things the deck has for it, in my opinion. We got that card a while ago, and I was like, man, this is another card that they gave us in Dragon afterward that I'm like, you just keep giving us good stuff. Like,
why did I need this? Why do I need to be able to get back my Legionnaire from the graveyard? Okay, sure.
like man, give me a striker card like that. Like, we haven't had one since, like, Engage. Like, come on now.
I mean, you got linkage.
The card's very but
mid AF.
it's very but I mean, like, a Safer, I would agree with that. That'd be cool. But yeah, so I think that's really insightful though, because see, even like Sanafond and Triple Burst, these were like older theory cards too. I like Sanafond a lot just for the graveyard stoppage, and like even Triple Burst just so you have like quick access if you ever need to go for like a Pisty play too.
Yeah.
So
that's kind of why Triple Burst is in the deck, is for the Pisty play, because it lets you go into like triggering your Pisty and then go into seals. And the thing with Triple Burst too, that used to be more relevant, is it used to help you like get through the at Ignister board. There was a time that I was able to OTK through. I don't remember. They had like Wind Pegasus in the graveyard, plus they didn't use their Danmari. So I was able to make a board of like Borrel's Sword plus like Savage Dragon plus Triple Burst plus something else, and I was able to attack into their monster. They use Danmari, and of course, you have the Savage negate that, and then you like get over their boss monster, and then they're like, all right, well, I'm gonna Wind Pegasus, shuffle your field, and it's like, oh well, I can Triple Burst negate that, because it's in the damage step because you're destroying their monster, which is really cool. And then Sanafond, just to briefly talk about that, is making a comeback, cutting out that Boral Sword, because of DPE and how big of a problem that card is for this deck. Sanafond, you're able to if they DPE pop you and you're able to continue playing, you can go for Sanafond and lock them out of their DPE for the rest of the game by just using its effect, shutting off their graveyard, and just continuing to play from there.
Yeah, big fan of that too. And I always loved when I started seeing like the Heretic Seal going up to more than just the one. Having that as follow up is so crazy. How often would you say you go into Appaloosa?
Apple it's there, but like you don't go into it too often. But it's one of those cards that like it doesn't come up until it comes up, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like it's one of those things where it's like you're staring down a board and you need to link it off and go into something. And it's like, all right, well they have like against Striker's a bad example. Because it's like, okay, I can make triple burst. But
Triple burst insane.
Yeah, you're facing off against a board, but like say you think that they could have a Nibiru, or like maybe you have knowledge that they have a Nibiru, but you can make an Apo really easily under 5 summons. So you might make an Apo for 2 and then continue to play. Or use your Pisty underneath it, because it's really good going second, not so good going first though.
I mean, Apple isn't even that bad against like Sword.
Yeah, it's not. It's like a very good mid game card. It doesn't come up too much, but when it does come up, you really kick yourself if you're not playing it.
Against Drytron, even that card's pretty goated.
Yeah.
Just being able to stop like the Alpha Zeta, whatnot.
Yeah, that's one of the big reasons to keep it in is, if you play against that deck, like, and you summon Apo against them, the game's just over.
The other thing I want to talk about too is that there is a different variant of this, like I was talking about earlier too, with like Plasma and Celestial, which I think is also pretty notable to talk about. My list is pretty vastly different to yours. Just because I am playing things like the DP, the Anaconda, and the extra deck. I am playing the Appaloosa as well. The other couple things that I want to mention is that I am playing the Meisters right now, but that would be swapped out with Valor for the current format just because that's more prevalent at the moment. I'm playing the 2 Synchron, the 2 Tracer, just because you need to make room. You can't play like 100 cards in this deck. You still want to make sure that it's consistent, right? Playing the double Abs Router, of course, you always just want to do that. Make sure that you always have a way to that, because it's also just like an amazing extender, as well as just a really good thing to be able to discard off things like Ravine. I am sideboarding like the Gozens, the IO, and just making sure that you can shut off your opponent and be able to stop the blowout cards from really being a problem on your board. But other than that, the deck plays pretty similar. The only thing that you're really adding in is the ability to add that extra layer of the Fusion Destiny onto your end combo. So it is very nice to see it, but there are 2 different ways to run it. No, you don't need DPE. It's just another way that if you do want to test it, here's a list for you to try. And if you like it, you like it. If you don't, you don't. But this is always a really good starting step to just kind of see if you do like it. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. I think I think it's definitely something to test out, because it's really strong. Like DP is probably the best card in the metagame right now, so putting it into just about any deck is never really a bad thing. Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
like you're putting DPE into the deck. Like, okay, sure, like good card. Like draw two, pop something every turn. That seems pretty good to me. Like I can't complain about that.
Yeah, it's pretty nice. DP has been going into quite a bit, so I'm a fan. I think it's cool. Maybe we'll see that be cycled out and we'll just play like regular Dragon instead of with the DP stuff. But that's all about the next ban list that shows up and where we really take the deck. I'd be interested to see if they do anything in favor of Dragon for the next list. I don't think they would, but who knows? We've seen crazier things, right?
Konami, please give me back my Striker Dragons. I'm sorry. I promise I won't abuse them again. Please just give them back. I miss them so much.
Theory question: what happens if they unironically just go like Wyvern to 1?
Why? Oh, Clips Library?
Yeah.
oh, that's very fun. I get to have a lot of fun with
that. Yeah. I couldn't even imagine. That'd just be insane. Like every Dragon player would just rejoice all at once. It'd be crazy.
Yeah, if you get Eclipse Wyvern, you 100% start playing the former prize card in the deck again, because you can do something really cool with like Dragon Ravine, sending Eclipse Wyvern, banishing it, summoning Pisty, getting whatever it is you banished, or like say you have a Collapser. Actually, hold on. this is a better example. Say you open Chaos Space plus Eclipse Wyvern.
Yeah.
and you go add Collapse Serpent, summon Collapse Serpent, add Levianeer, add like prize card, add whatever you want back to your hands. You go into your Striker Dragon, you summon, you just start popping off, and then you can go into a Pisty because you have that extra card that you add off of Eclipse Wyvern. So that's probably going to give you enough gas to get into the Triple Burst play. You can Triple Burst back the Eclipse Wyvern again. Go into your seals, use the Eclipse Wyvern to make a Papega with like a Tracer or something. Put it in the graveyard, link off the Papega, banish it again later, and then you get a Levianeer, so you're going to rip a card, you're going to make a Sanaphon. So, like, I could easily see that if you started with, like, Chaos Space Eclipse Wyvern, you could easily end, like, Seal's Hot Red Sanaphon or Seal's Hot Red Zombie Master or something like that. Really easily.
Okay, so I was joking, but Konami, please don't do that. Like that would be something else. I do want to remind everyone, though, if you do need a coaching session, you can go to myself or Mike. We have a lot of different ideas and a lot of different backgrounds and decks, especially me for Striker and decks like Dragon for Mike. These are things that we feel very comfortable with. We've been playing for a very long time. So if you ever do need the additional help, feel free to reach out to one of us. You can go ahead and find me or him in our respective Discords. We're both on Twitch. We're both on YouTube. I don't know if you're on Twitter. I'm on Twitter.
I am on Twitter.
So there's multiple ways to reach out to us if you'd like. Again, we are less than 200 away from 8,000 subscribers. If you do want to be a part of that giveaway, let's hit 8K, and then we can make a big video about how you can enter to that. I hope that everyone has a wonderful night, and I'll catch you all in the next video. Thanks, everyone.